All right, well, welcome everyone to the Housing Forward Humboldt Developer Workshop. We're glad that you could join us. We have quite a large group, so we're excited about that. Thank you for your interest and participating. We are going to start with a little bit of technical support and overview. Just to introduce myself, I'm James Coles. I'm with Housing Tools, and we are the contractor that is assisting Humboldt County with their Housing Forward Humboldt outreach. And I am going to turn the first part of this presentation over to Jess, who's also with Housing Tools, and she'll go over some housekeeping and technical assistance before we get into the presentation and the discussion.
Thanks so much, James. Next slide, please. Okay, so good evening. My name is Jess Candela, and I'm a project manager with Housing Tools. I want to first thank everyone for taking the time to join us today. I'll be providing some technical support instructions for this evening's Housing Forward Humboldt Developer Workshop. Next slide, please. If you are deaf or hard of hearing or would prefer to read closed captions, we have enabled Zoom's live transcript feature. To view the closed captions, first you'll click live transcript at the bottom of your screen. Then you'll click the caret and select show subtitle. Instead, if you would like to hide the closed captions, you'll click live transcript at the bottom of your screen, click the caret, and then select hide subtitle. Next slide, please. We have 3 interactive features for the workshop tonight. First, we will have 5 polls. I will read the question and your answer choices aloud, and then you'll select your answer on the screen. Make sure you click the button at the bottom of the poll that reads Submit Poll. Polls are anonymous, and results will be shared live for the first 4 polls. We have one advanced poll that we will run at the end of the workshop. If you have an older version of Zoom, you may not be able to participate in the poll, as advanced polls are unique to Zoom's newest version. You are invited to type an answer into the chat if you would like to participate in that final poll, but have an older version of Zoom. I'll let you know when we reach this 5th and final poll at the end of the workshop. Next is the chat. You can see that you can type a message in the chat and send a message to everyone or just to me. Please take a moment, if you haven't already, to introduce yourself to everyone in the chat. You can include information such as your name, your role in the community, and where in Humboldt County you live or work. If you have any technical difficulties or have any questions and need support, please send me a direct chat message. You can find me listed as Jess Candela, tech support. Next is the Q&A. You may type questions into the Q&A that you like for us to answer at the end of the presentation. Please make sure you add questions into the Q&A and not the chat. Again, if you have a question, please type that into the Q&A. You can find the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. If we don't have time to get to all of the questions, we will post a document on our website along with a recording of the workshop. Links to these materials will be shared with all registrants via email. Finally, if you're joining us via calling in on a phone and can join via the web, we recommend that you do so. The polls, the chat, and the Q&A features can only be used via the web. If you have a personal computer, a laptop, a tablet, or a smartphone and have a Zoom account, you can enter the meeting ID for this workshop to join via the web. The meeting ID is 847-0897-2715. Again, that's 847-0897-2715. Next slide, please. We wanted to let you know that the presentation portion of today's workshop will be recorded and posted on the county's YouTube channel. The purpose for posting this recording is to make it available as a resource for community members, whether they attend or don't attend the workshop. The Q&A session will not be recorded, so you can feel comfortable asking questions. We do have two note takers that will be paraphrasing anonymous questions and answers for a resource document that will be posted on Humboldt County's website. Names will not be attributed to questions asked in the resource document. Next slide, please. We have group agreements to share for tonight's virtual workshop. These help us to create a welcoming space for everyone to learn and participate together. The group agreements are as follows. Everyone has a seat at the table, and everyone is encouraged to participate. Please start your question with your name and your role in the community if you feel comfortable doing so. One person speaks at a time. All communication, whether verbal or in writing, must be polite and respectful of others. And any violations of these agreements will be cause for actions by the facilitators, including turning off microphones or expulsion from the workshop. Next slide, please. So what is Housing Forward Humboldt? Housing Forward Humboldt is an effort of the Humboldt County Planning and Building Department to partner with the community to increase the supply of housing and encourage housing that is affordable. The department invites the community to participate in a virtual workshop series held via Zoom. You can attend or watch the recordings of 3 workshops designed for property owners, current and future developers of housing, and residents interested in ADUs. Tonight's workshop is designed for current and future developers of housing. Next slide, please. Okay, so now we have our first poll. So I'm going to launch the poll and you'll see it on your screen. Our question is, how did you hear about this event? And your answer choices are Humboldt County Facebook, Humboldt County Twitter, Humboldt County website, email from Humboldt County, email from Housing Tools, local organization, radio, news station, or newspaper, word of mouth, or other. And if you choose other, please describe that in the chat. So go ahead and select your answer on the screen and then make sure you click the button at the bottom that reads Submit Poll. I see just about half of us have responded, so I'll leave it open for about 20 more seconds. Okay, if you haven't already, go ahead and submit your answer and click Submit Poll at the bottom. So I'm going to end the poll and share the results. So again, our question was, how did you hear about this event? And the answer choices, we had Humboldt County Facebook at 0%, Humboldt County Twitter at 0%, Humboldt County website at 3%, email from Humboldt County 51%, email from Housing Tools 11%, local organization 14%, radio, news station, or newspaper 6%, word of mouth 11%, and other was 3%. Thanks so much. Next slide, please. Okay, and I'll turn it back over to James.
Thanks, Jess. So we want to start out with some introductions. The first portion of this workshop will be a presentation, and then the final portion will be conversation, question and answer. But for the presentation and those presenting, we want to do these introductions. I'm James Coles. I'm the facilitator with Housing Tools. Jess Candela is providing tech support. Cassie is a note taker. And then from Humboldt County, we have Michelle, who is also going to be facilitating, and Andrew, who will be a note taker. So our agenda this evening will go as follows. We've done the welcome and Zoom technical support, the workshop group agreements and introductions. So we'll start out next with an overview of some housing terms and definitions, and then go to the developer workshop presentation, which will be the main part of this presentation. That will be followed by some questions and answers, give you an opportunity to provide comments or ask questions and for us to have a conversation. And then we'll finish up with resources and next steps and provide Humboldt County contact for follow-up going forward. So next few slides will be some housing terms and definitions, which will be helpful for us to review so we can understand some of these terms that are used throughout the presentation and throughout housing policy and legislation and funding programs. The first is accessory dwelling units or ADUs, that's the acronym. These are complete independent living facilities for one or more persons on the same lot as the primary structure and can be attached or detached from the primary structure, also known as second units or granny flats. Affordable housing, the generally accepted measure for housing affordability is spending less than 30% of one's gross household income on housing costs, including rent or mortgage, principal and interest. In the context of the housing element, which is the planning document that the county uses, affordable housing generally focuses on housing for extremely low, very low, low, and moderate income households. And this type of housing generally receives public subsidies. Market rate housing is housing where the market, through supply, demand, and other factors, sets the cost to the occupant and there are no public subsidies. Tiny house definition to be used here is built on a permanent foundation, must meet state and local zoning codes, and is considered permanent housing. There is also a definition in the county zoning code for movable tiny house, house on wheels that is registered with the California Department of Motor Vehicles and meets certain safety standards and may also be considered permanent housing. Mixed income housing is mixed income housing communities that comprise differing levels of affordability, some at market rate while others are affordable to low income households. Housing rehabilitation, repairs to address deferred maintenance and aging housing stock. This may also address abatement of asbestos or lead, installation of energy efficient measures, and removal of architectural barriers for those with mobility needs. Infill development refers to the process of developing vacant or underdeveloped parcels within existing incorporated areas that are already largely developed. Permanent supportive housing. This is housing with wraparound supportive services that provide tenant support. And these would be tenants that have experienced homelessness to help them stabilize and develop increased self-sufficiency. Housing first is a term that means housing with low barriers to entry that seeks to first stabilize residents within a stable living environment and provide wraparound supportive services as a first step to then addressing other mental health, substance use, or other issues. We'll now go through the developer workshop presentation. And this will include overview of the purpose of the presentation, the Humboldt County housing goals. Then we'll get into 3 different components of different ways that housing is facilitated within the county. This includes housing incentives that are offered by Humboldt County, state legislation, and then new state and local funding sources. The purpose of the workshop is to share information about housing development incentives and funding. This will be a broad overview of a number of incentives, funding programs, and legislation measures. So the purpose is really to give you sort of a broad overview of the landscape of the various ways that housing is being encouraged, facilitated, incentivized. And then depending on your particular interest or a particular project you're working on, you can hopefully use some of the information we share today to use as a foundation to do further research, talk to county staff, talk to those in your network and other experts to find out more. And this is to foster a public-private collaboration to meet county housing goals. This is an important and challenging issue to address. It can only be addressed through a public-private partnership and all members of the county coming together. So this is a recognition of that fact, and hopefully will initiate some conversations, some new collaborations, and some new ideas to address housing needs in the county. So the Humboldt County housing goals can be summarized with these three statements. First, housing production. This is a goal to increase the supply of housing for all income groups and to remove regulatory and procedural barriers that impede development of housing. Housing diversity, increase diversity of housing in the forms, in a variety of forms for diverse populations, inclusive of special needs populations. And workforce housing, increase the supply of rental and ownership housing that is affordable to the local workforce and is in close proximity to job centers. So we'll now go over a number of county housing incentives that we wanted to make you aware of. I am kind of co-presenting this with Michelle Nielsen, who is the county planner. She can provide more insight on status and background for each of these incentives, and she's also available to answer your questions. So the first one we wanted to summarize is the multifamily rezone project. There's been a recent workshop on this particular incentive that was put on by the county with Michelle presenting. And this upzones owner volunteered properties to accommodate by right multifamily development. There's two different pathways to do this. One, pathway number one, are parcels in the unincorporated county that are between a half acre and 10 acres, have accessible utilities, but are not in the Martin Slough interceptor service area or Shelter Cove. Pathway 2 ensures compliance with SB10, which we will go over as well this evening, that new piece of state legislation. That's to upzone certain infill parcels zoned for low density residential to allow up to 10 units. These parcels must be in the US designated urban cluster, and Michelle can provide more information on the location of those urban clusters and how to find out more about it.
Thank you, James, and welcome everybody. Yes, the US Census designated urban clusters are based on the population. For unincorporated Humboldt County, the clusters are in Greater Eureka, Greater Fortuna, McKinleyville, and unincorporated Scotia being the most southerly. If we have time, we'll give a brief demonstration of where this data can be located. It is on the county's public GIS. And if not, we have prepared a navigation guide for folks to locate this important data source.
Thanks, Michelle. Something else that I intended to state at the outset as well is just to clarify that these various housing incentives that we are going to review are county housing incentives. So they apply to the unincorporated county area. Of course, there are the other jurisdictions within the county that have their own housing programs. And so these incentives would apply to unincorporated county. However, the county does encourage a collaboration among the various jurisdictions and information sharing so that all the jurisdictions can meet shared housing goals. The next housing incentive are the housing opportunity zones. And these are areas identified for residential development that are served by community water and sewer. It streamlines the environmental review of residential subdivisions in these locations and provides funding and development priority for infrastructure projects that address physical capacity constraints to residential land in these zones. Now, within these housing opportunity zones, there may be parcels that continue to have development constraints, such as not fully developed roads or private roads. So there will be those situations, but the housing opportunity zones overall are a way to incentivize development in locations that are appropriate for this type of development. And the zones are identified in maps that the county has available, and we can share links to the maps that show these locations. We're just summarizing here where they are generally. So they're parts of McKinleyville, Myrtletown, and cutting outside of Eureka, Humboldt Hill, Scotia, Weout, Miranda, Redway, and Garberville. There's also the mixed housing zoning district, and this is a new zoning district that allows higher residential densities and flexible housing configuration in the county's housing opportunity zones. And this was established as part of the community plan update process. They also includes objective standards that address community character and priorities. There's also the density bonus, and this is a state law. Some of you may be familiar with it, others not, but it's applicable statewide, and it is an incentive for housing developers if they are providing a certain percentage of affordable units to build more units per acre than what would typically be allowed by the zoning code. And the purpose is to make this type of housing more affordable and feasible by allowing these density bonuses. So depending on the affordability and the percentage of special needs housing, the amount of the bonus can vary. But it also includes the ability to request some exceptions to development standards in order to make affordable housing possible, such as parking reduction incentives. Currently, the county code is not updated to the state statute. However, if an application comes in requesting the density bonus, then the county relies on the state law to guide the application of the bonus. And Michelle, I don't know if you have anything else you want to add to that.
And not too much. Yeah, the language of the county's ordinance does allow the county this flexibility to rely on state law while we're still in the early stages of bringing forward an ordinance that aligns with current statute. So.
Next incentive are fee deferrals A fee deferral program is currently in process that will be brought to the board for consideration. And this would defer planning and building permit fees until occupancy of affordable housing. At earliest, fees would be paid prior to issuance of a certificate of occupancy. And this facilitates housing development by really reducing the construction period costs, carrying costs, and interest costs for affordable housing. This effort is part of a whole package of efforts that the county is undertaking that are funded by the state through SB2 grants. So you'll hear us refer to SB2 and that program throughout the presentation, as that is helping to support some of these incentives, in particular modifications to zoning code. Also, pre-approved plans. These are code compliant house plans that are made available to the public. The purpose is to reduce permitting uncertainty, processing time, and design costs by providing plans that are code compliant and reviewed ahead of time. Currently, there are ADU plans that are available through the county, and the county is now in the process of developing pre-approved duplex plans to add to that library. Tiny house village provisions. This is also in process with support from the SB2 grant. And this will amend the zoning code to allow tiny house villages by right in all zones that allow multifamily dwellings. And the tiny house villages are defined as groupings of 3 or more houses or detached bedrooms with central sanitary, laundry, cooking, and dining facilities. And there are other objective development standards that the projects must meet. Article 34 is a part of the state constitution that requires voters to approve a jurisdiction's participation in the construction of low-income affordable housing units. And in 2020, the county passed Measure I, and this allowed the county to allocate a portion of total housing units in the county as affordable. And it amounts to 2.5% of the total number of housing units that are existing in unincorporated Humboldt County. And currently that set aside equates to 872 low-income affordable housing units that are part of that allocation that are available in to meet the Article 34 requirements. Fast track application review. This is a program in which the county is helping to expedite and facilitate processing of permits. So the county notifies the applicant whether an application is complete within 30 days of receipt. And then depending on the size of the project, there are set review times for county review of the application. It is 60 days for a project that is 50 or fewer units, or 120 days for a project of more than 50 units. And this process also prioritizes low-income affordable projects. Residential land inventory. This is an inventory that's identified in the housing element of the general plan for low-income affordable housing. Multifamily development is allowed by right in the residential land inventory. Incentives include priority processing, expedited review, financial assistance, and modification of development standards. Michelle, you wanted to share a little bit more about where folks might find the inventory?
Sure. So I could do it if I can share my screen. If we have time to do that right now.
Do you want to do it right now? I think we have time.
Okay.
If you want, or we can do it towards the end.
Well, why don't we do it now since we're on this
Okay.
topic?
Okay. So I'll stop share mine and then you can share your screen.
This is me. So everybody should be seeing the county. Everyone's seeing the banner for the county webpage at the top, I assume. Okay. Just go full screen here. So we can just briefly show you where the urban clusters layer is because it's in the same location. So HumboldtGov.org will get you to get the COVID or the county homepage. What you want is this GIS/maps. Click on that. And then you have what you want. The option here is you want the web GIS. Just click on that. Scroll down a little bit. You have the option for desktop and mobile. I use the desktop one. I do think the mobile one has pretty decent capability. So it's going to load pretty quick, hopefully. You have to agree, just check the box and then hit OK. And so the data layers that you want to look in is the layer list, which is on the upper right of your screen with the green bar. You scroll down to where you get to jurisdictional boundaries and land use. And there's a little caret on the left-hand side. You just click on that. And you get more layers. And what the layer you want is the fourth one down, housing inventory. We have another arrow, so click that. And the inventory is the second one from the top, 2019 adopted housing element inventory. So to turn on, just click the button and it all shows up. And as you can see, there's areas, and then to scroll in, you just use your mouse to scroll in. Sorry, hopefully I'm not making anybody dizzy. And all these parcels here that have this color, they're all part of the inventory. And you can find out more information by clicking on a parcel. And first comes up the details about the parcel. And there's a little caret on the upper right. Click on that. And you get to the adopted housing element inventory data layer. And it gives you details about that it's in the inventory, it's vacant, has a realistic capacity value. It's not this parcel of one housing unit is what that means. And the income category is above moderate. As part of preparing a housing element to be legally adequate for each and every parcel in the housing element inventory, the jurisdiction's obligated to identify a realistic capacity value and an income category. So urban cluster, we're going to turn that off. Find the urban cluster, you just, again, turn that on. And these are going to be all not out in that neck of the woods. We'll go to, it's this gray that you can see, sort of. It's a little hard to see. If it's too hard for you to see, what you can do is you can change the background, and how you do that is on the upper right, there's on the third from left, there's an icon that says base map gallery. Click on that. And then I see it better. I use this light gray canvas. It seems to help the visibility. It kind of fades in the background, the pictures. So the gray are the urban clusters. And so you just, to confirm that for your parcel of interest, you just click on it like we did on that last one. We have that little arrow again, find out more, and here we go. It's in the urban cluster. It has the detail. It's not in the urban cluster. It's not gray. You click on it, and there's no arrow here. There's no data to display because it's not in an urban cluster. So hopefully that helps. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. Hopefully that helps everybody. But we all have resources to share to make this easier so you can remember how to locate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.
And then James, just swap your displays top left.
All right. Is that right?
I think it's Zoom's thinking about it. Let's see if it pulls it up.
I think I had it right the first time, but it takes a while. Maybe.
We're back to seeing your notes.
Interesting. Okay.
Let's try it one more time. And then just try advancing the slide.
I think maybe I need to, how's that?
We're still seeing your notes. And while we're
here, maybe this is.
Yep, there you go. Perfect.
Sorry about that, folks. So that information is helpful that Michelle showed, because some of these housing incentives will apply to the urban clusters area, or they'll apply to the housing inventory areas. So we just talked about the residential land inventory. Surplus property. There is one county-owned parcel that the county staff has been working on preparing for affordable housing use. It does have some constraints that they are working through. They have a pending grant application to fund site planning and environmental compliance. And so ideally, this would be a site for an 18-unit housing complex affordable to those who are earning at or below 60% of area median income. The Residential Development Technical Assistance Program is an initiative to provide workshops and outreach to developers and property owners, such as this one, such as the Housing Forward Humboldt series, online updates to changes in code and procedures, and professional development for planning and building department workforce to implement new housing incentives. Now we'll go to our poll number 2.
Great. Thanks so much, James. So you'll see poll number 2 on your screen. Our question is, which of Humboldt County's current available resources have you used? Please select all that apply. Your answer choices are web GIS, what Michelle was just showing you, online zoning regulations, and other web-based resources, meetings with staff via phone, in person, or virtual. Other, please describe in the chat, or none of the above. And again, you can select all that apply. I'll leave this open for about 20 more seconds. Okay, if you haven't had a chance yet, go ahead and select your answer choices on your screen and make sure you click the button that says submit poll at the bottom. So I'm going to end the poll and share the results. Again, our question was, which of Humboldt County's current available resources have you used? Please select all that apply. WebGIS was 59%. Online zoning regulations and other web-based resources was 38%. Meetings with staff via phone, in person, and or virtual was 62%. Other, please describe in the chat, was 3%, and none of the above was 24%. And these percentages add up to more than 100% because you can select more than one answer. So thanks so much for participating.
Now we're going to go over 4 pieces of new legislation that are intended to facilitate the production of housing. The first is SB10. And this makes it easier for the county to upzone for smaller, lower cost housing developments of up to 10 units in the urban cluster areas. There are other qualifying criteria within the law. Some of the highlights of that are listed here. 10 housing units per parcel are allowed. And this is for parcels currently zoned for low density residential. The legislative body must adopt the ordinance. And there are various urban infill criteria that must be met for applicable parcels. And in Humboldt County, parcels for which this applies are upzoned to have a new zoning called R3Q. And also just kind of a reminder, this is part of the multifamily rezone program that the county is initiating as Pathway 2. Anything else you wanted to add on that, Michelle?
No, not at this time, but thank you.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Another piece of legislation is SB9. And this allows homeowners to divide their single family property into 2 lots. Up to 2 homes are allowed on each lot after the lot split, allowing up 4 plexes in single family zoned neighborhoods. Lot splits must create 2 parcels of similar size that are at least 1,200 square feet. Local governments may apply their own objective design standards. In the case of the county, they do not have additional design standards other than what is in the legislation. And state law has established some qualifying criteria for where these lot splits can occur. And Michelle, this is just confirmed, this is also limited to within the urban cluster?
Yes, it is limited to the urban cluster. I do have a few more things to add on this one. The parcels also must be legal parcels, and they have to be wholly within in a designated urban cluster. They can't be partially in, partially out to be eligible. When drafting this legislation, the authors recognized that it is creating 2 new by right entitlements, but at the same time that has the potential to cause impacts to aquatic habitat. So in order to be eligible for SB9, there cannot be aquatic habitat present on the site. And there's no exception process. It's either if it's present, it's not eligible for SB9. And in Humboldt County, very few areas are mapped using the SB9 standard. So preparation of seasonally appropriate biological resources prepared by a qualified professional will probably be necessary for a lot of parcels where there's interest in utilizing these entitlements. Another requirement to be eligible is the parcel's primary use must be single family residential or residential suburban, residential 1 family, and residential 2 family are eligible. It's uncertain if Ag General will be eligible. There's technical assistance being put together by the state that's supposed to be published a little later this year. So it's unknown if that zoning district will be eligible. There's additional sideboards on this exercising this requirement. And of course, any property in the coastal zone is subject to further review and regulation in accordance with the Coastal Act and applicable case law.
So SB 35 is a measure that is intended to incentivize the development of housing affordable to low-income households. And this requires local governments to streamline the review and approval process for these projects. The project that requests an SB 35 review must be located in a zoning district that allows residential uses. And the eligible sites are exempt from CEQA review, and then local governments must abide by strict timelines for application review. There are some other requirements, such as restrictions on demolition of historic buildings, residential units occupied by tenants, and a few others. AB 2162 is an incentive measure for permanent supportive housing. So this is housing that would assist special needs residents who have experienced homelessness. Qualifying projects must be affordable to low-income households with at least a quarter of the units dedicated to supportive housing. Again, supportive housing being housing with supports for special needs residents. Removes the CEQA review requirement, requires a ministerial approval process without discretionary review, and also requires strict timelines for application review by local governments. Our next few slides will go over some funding sources that are available for housing development. The first are county home funds. This is a federal funding source that the county can apply for through the state. The county has an ongoing home buyer assistance program for which it receives some program income on repayment of those loans. So the balance will vary from year to year. It generally will range between 500,000 to 800,000. And the plan for use of these funds is new construction and rehabilitation of permanent low-income affordable housing. This is done by offering below market rate interest and deferred payment loans to the builders of that housing. A new state funding source is called the Permanent Local Housing Allocation. And in Humboldt County, the Board of Supervisors approved a 5-year plan for use of this allocation in 2021. It calls for an investment in one or more rental projects affordable to those earning 60% of area median income or below, and will total $1.5 million for the 5 years. The county is planning to issue an RFP for awarding these funds in 2023. The HomeKey Program is another new funding source that's been made available by the state. It's used to acquire, convert, and rehabilitate structures to house individuals experiencing homelessness. The projects must include wraparound supportive services, and there's about $38.8 million available in the current funding round for the category of balance of state, which includes Humboldt County and other rural counties throughout the state. It's beginning to be used more in rural areas. It can be used for smaller projects, for small motels, or even new construction now. And the state seems to be making more of an effort to make it available in the rural areas, as initially it was mostly used in urban areas for larger kind of hotel or motel conversion projects. So it appears that this program will continue in the coming years. It's received strong support. The Infill Infrastructure Grant is another state funding program for providing new public infrastructure that supports affordable housing development. So the eligible project just needs a minimum proportion of units as affordable to low incomes. It's 15%. So it could be more of a mixed income project or fully affordable. The grant is used to support streets, sidewalks, bike and pedestrian paths, streetscape improvements, utility extensions, et cetera, that will support the development of the housing. And the funds are granted to cities and counties, and now a recent change is they also grant these funds directly to developers, although they require coordination with cities or counties. But a developer can also be the lead applicant for these funds. So we've listed some resources here, and we'll leave the slide here for a little bit. Also, we'll be making this presentation available so you can have these links through the county's website. But these are resources for you where you can find out more. There's some county links as well as state links to the funding programs that we summarized here. All right, we'll go back to Jess for our third poll now.
Great, thanks, James. Okay, you'll see poll number 3 on your screen now. The question is, which housing topics from today's workshop would you like more information on? Please select all that apply. Humboldt County's housing opportunity zones, Humboldt County's multifamily rezone project, funding sources for development of affordable housing, SB9, the new duplex and urban infill subdivision law, or other, please describe in the chat. And again, you can select all that apply. Okay, if you haven't had a chance yet, go ahead and select the answer choices you'd like on your screen, and then make sure you click the button at the bottom that says Submit Poll. So I'm going to end the poll and share the results. So again, our question was, which housing topics from today's workshop would you like more information on? Please select all that apply. Humboldt County's housing opportunity zones received 52%. Humboldt County's multifamily rezone project, 67%. Funding sources for development of affordable housing, 70%. SB9, the new duplex and urban infill subdivision law, 55%. Or other, please describe in the chat, 6%. Thanks so much for sharing this with us. It lets us know that you want to know a lot more about a lot of these topics, so we appreciate that. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Jess. We wanted to leave ample time for Q&A. So at this time, we would like to open this up to your questions, and you can do that either through the Q&A feature or you can raise your hand and to do it verbally. But Jess, do you have a list that you want to start out with, or?
Yeah, thanks, James. So that concludes the presentation portion of the Housing Forward Humboldt Developer Workshop, which is held February 16th, 2022. So our live attendees, please hang tight for the Q&A portion of the workshop. Well, you'll get to ask our panelists questions. To our viewers watching the recording of the workshop, thank you so much for watching, and check out Humboldt County's website for a document summarizing the Q&A.